Hello, I'm just watching the participant number come up. Folks are joining us in the room. Hello. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're coming from. Hello. Awesome. Ni, bonjour, and tanse. My name is Jacqueline Jennings. I am of mixed heritage. I am Swampy Cree, Anishinaabe, and Métis, as well as of European settler descent by way of New Zealand. My Cree family is from Treaty 5 and Treaty 9 territory. My Anishinaabe and OG Cree family is from Peguis First Nation in Winnipeg, and my Métis ancestors are from the Red River Valley, but the majority of them ended up in Montana below the Medicine Line. And I was born and raised in the beautiful unceded territory of the Squamish Nation outside of what is currently known as Vancouver. I reside there today and am ever and increasingly grateful to the ancestors and relatives who have taken care of the land that took care of them since time began. I am also a mother, and I am the director of the Fireweed Fellowship, as well as an associate of Raven Indigenous Capital Partners. And I am so excited to have this conversation today with three innovative and inspiring Indigenous entrepreneurs who are running thriving businesses in just I guess we're all kind of sick of that word now, aren't we? An unprecedented time of a global pandemic, and not to mention climate crisis and racialized uprising and reckoning. And so, yeah, I'm very grateful to be sharing this space with everyone today. And I'll just speak a little bit about the Fireweed Fellowship and our friends at the First Nations Tech Council who approached us to collaborate on this event. We have a long-standing relationship with FNTC, and the Fireweed Fellowship is about a year and a half old. It is an initiative through the charitable arm of Raven Indigenous Capital Partners. And Fireweed is the first national in scope Indigenous accelerator program for entrepreneurs. So we have taken our best crack at a decolonized approach to entrepreneurship and developing a curriculum that takes into account not just sort of the Silicon Valley status quo best practices in business, but also centers Indigenous ways of knowing and being, and our worldview. So centering relationships, bringing in a trauma-informed approach to entrepreneurship and particularly finance, and all of the work that we do around money, and really rooting our work together in ceremony. And anytime we gather together in circle, as we will today, it feels sacred and feels like ceremony. So also a wonderful perk of today is that I get to do that with these amazing entrepreneurs. Two of whom are fellows in the Fireweed Fellowship, and I'll let them introduce themselves. But I just wanted to mention that when we envisioned this webinar, we wanted to recognize that while we're a year into this pandemic, and for most businesses that, I would say most businesses have been impacted by this, whether it is the way that you interface with your clients and customers, or just the way you working from home versus working as a team in an office. And this could be a webinar that happened at any time during this year, but it feels like a year in feels quite relevant because we have now a bit of a track record. Things are But I mean, things can be really destabilized, but at least we kind of have a better sense of how this might play out into the future and really what the key impacts are to our individual businesses. So I think this is well timed. Where we're located in BC, we're seeing restrictions impacting businesses, fluctuating and changing, weekly at this point. And so just really wanted to offer some support and resourcing for our community of entrepreneurs as things go forward. And I think that the best way that we know to do that is to root in storytelling. So this is probably the most talking I will do for the next hour. As one of our partners in Raven Capital refers to our team as repressed entrepreneurs. I think it's better to hear from those who are in the trenches doing entrepreneurship in the day-to-day. And I'm so fortunate that I get to hold them up and stand in a position of support to the incredible work that they're doing and witness the ways that they're adapting and supporting their communities as well. So yeah, I think with that, I'm going to invite Joella and Lynn Marie and Darian to the stage, the virtual stage. And just to know, like we hear a lot in conversations in the media that are happening around Indigenous entrepreneurship to the degree that they are. There's a lot of conversation around resilience, and I think that's great and it's so important. But I'm also really interested in how we can raise the topic of Indigenous innovation as not a new thing. It's something that our ancestors mastered and were experts at, and also how Indigenous entrepreneurs are thriving today. And that has really been our experience at Raven Capital, is witnessing our portfolio companies taking the in some cases considerable changes to their business in stride and really finding ways to thrive and also to uphold their communities. So with that, I will invite folks up here to join me, and we'll start with some introductions and inviting Lynn Marie and Joella and Darian, and I can tell you a little bit about them each, or they can tell you about themselves actually, and not just who they are and what they do, but who they serve and how they got here today in their business. So perhaps I will hand it over to, would one of you like to volunteer to go first? I know going first is always the scariest, but I know Lynn Marie and Joella very well, so I might want to pick on one of them a little bit. Who's feeling chatty?
Okay.
Go ahead, Joella. I'm having a bit of an allergic reaction, so I'm drinking and coughing a bit. So you go ahead first and give me a moment.
Yeah, that's funny, because I started to lose my voice in a call this morning too, so I'm like, I'm gonna let it rest. So apologies in advance. But Iji, Joella Uji, Meo Kiji, Ine Don Hogan, Ite Dag Hogan, Itzo Ellen Rear, Itzin Cho Big Maisie, and Ellen Profit. And it's an honor to be here in my grandmother's traditional territory of Mayo Yukon, so central Yukon, where we still have lots of snow on the ground. I am the founder and owner of the Yukon Soaps Company, natural handcrafted soap that honors Indigenous ways of knowing and being, uses plants from the boreal forest, and that I grow myself, that supports community. And I bought this business kind of on a whim many years ago, because it seems like so long, but I think it's 9 years ago now, because I just wanted a little side hustle. I was working full-time as a manager of heritage and culture for my First Nation, but wanted a little gig on the side to help give me extra money, but something that would align with what I was interested and my values. And so this business had been owned by two other women in the Yukon was successful. I used the product. So it just seemed like a good fit. What I had no idea, excuse me, I guess, was like the incredible opportunities out there for Indigenous businesses to thrive, but also how much when you really put your like heart, soul, passion into a product and a business, how that can show and lead to, you know, a successful brand and product, I guess. So is that a good intro, Jack?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I love hearing your story. I always forget, and I'm so pleased to hear. It's unusual to hear about entrepreneurs acquiring other businesses, and yeah, so I smile every time I hear that. Thank you for sharing. How are you doing, Lynn Marie? You okay?
Of course, like when I have to do speak on a panel, I'm like, oh, I have all these allergies. No, I think I'm okay. Yeah, my name is Lynn Marie Angus. I am the owner of Sister Sage. I come from the Gitga'ala, Nisga'a, Cree and Métis Nations. Currently, I am operating on the unceded traditional territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. A little bit about my startup. My sister and I, she's actually, you can see her walking around in the back every once in a while, but she's always so shy and scared. So I do a lot of the speaking. We started in September 2018. And I think there was a lot of reasons for us to start a business. We were both coming out of like a crisis. I was working in a high-rise construction, which was, you know, I experienced a lot of like sexual harassment and racism, and it was just not a good place for me to be. It was like a really toxic place for me. And my sister, she was pregnant with her first child, and she was facing homelessness in Vancouver. And so both of us were like, you know, it was crisis and we knew we had to start something together. But we also knew that it had to be Indigenous and it had to promote our own growth in all aspects, and something that I was not getting from where I was at previously. And so it took a while, a lot of texting back and forth and lots of jokes, like, what are we gonna do? But she had an interest in making bath bombs, and I was interested in soap. And to be quite honest, I hadn't even made any soap before before we started the business. So it was a lot of like late night YouTube video watching, lots of reading and lots of research until I finally broke ground and started making soap. I mean, this story is like, I could go on and on about my story, but I'll just make it pretty brief. So I did a lot of education, like quick courses, like 6-8 week courses to learn about business and, you know, business basics. And we're a bootstrap business. And so to date, we haven't received any investment. I am receiving a loan in the future, like very, very soon from CEO. So that's coming up and that's really exciting. But yeah, I guess that's, did I even say what I make? I make soap, bath bombs, smokeless smudge sprays, and salve. And like, I'm always forget about that part. I'm always talking about like entrepreneurship. I make things.
You spend most of your time making stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to be here and share about my story. Who's next, Darian?
Hi, everyone. I'm so jealous. One thing, Jacqueline, I'm going to need your help to help me with a proper introduction that's like as amazing as yours. It was incredible. So I will, yeah.
We don't have enough time to teach you Michif right now, but
okay.
After this, we can do something.
I will come to you as a Padawan, because I feel like you typically in environments that I'm in, I am one of the only Indigenous person there, and so they're okay with the big capital I. And they're like, and I kind of get painted with that brush. So no one's ever been interested in like, where does it go though? And how deep does it go? And so my mom being Métis and married my dad, who came as a refugee from Hungary, and they met and found love, and produced my 2 older brothers and I, which is very exciting. And yeah, I think I'm still part of this discovering world where, you know, it being on one side of my family and discovering this heritage and language, it's beautiful. So those introductions, honestly, that was the best part of my day so far. So thank you for that. It's very cool. I worked over the years in various kind of worlds. One was in like healthcare, and then I worked in like publishing, and then I actually got a chance to work at this really cool law firm that was developing this fundraising software, and I loved it. And at the same time, Apple Watch, or like Apple phones had just started, and so I got to be part of this group that we were developing some of the first what do they call apps in the store. And so I loved that world and kind of had a foot in these 2 different worlds. One was corporate and one was charity. And then I realized I wanted to start a service agency that did marketing for both worlds. So I wanted the chance to kind of, if you've ever seen or know the Robin Hood slogan, I wanted the chance to work for the rich so I could serve the poor. And so I started Jelly out of my basement here in Fort Langley 8 years ago, where we had a chance to work with brands like Lego and Warner Brothers and do these amazing campaigns, mostly to do with like SEO and digital ads. And just when social media was getting started, we helped folks with that. And at the same time, we got to work with some really cool charities and startups and folks doing some really good kind of B Corp or social justice work in the world. And so we got to take the amazing learnings from these large corporations and then apply it to these smaller budgets, we love that opportunity now. And then we launched a training academy 5 years ago for folks that couldn't afford anything but wanted to learn how to do it. We equipped them with like the skills and knowing how to do anything to do with like digital and PR and social.
Thank you. Oh, I'm so happy to be with you all. Thank you for those beautiful introductions. I'm just gonna take a pause and explain our format for the day. So obviously everyone's introduced themselves, and then we're going to have kind of a rolling interview conversation for about 50 minutes with some key questions. And then we'll have a Q&A following that. And if at any point you want, because we have some very high-tech facilitation, you'll notice a Q&A function that is separate from the chat window, which if you've been spending as much time on Zoom as I have, I didn't even clock that there was a new thing. So you're welcome to open that up, and you can put your questions in there, and I will find opportunities to fit them in to our conversation. Yeah, awesome. Maybe someone can just like, at some point, if you think of a question, you can, I just really want to see how it works. I'd love, even if you have a funny question, like if you want to know about Darian's beautiful background, you could just throw it in there. So we can answer and see how that function works. So the first question I'm going to throw out there, and then Lynn Marie and Joella and Darian are going to self-organize and determine who goes first and who goes next, and play tag and pass the talking stick or the baton. The first question is, what were some of your, if you can remember, what were some of those business goals that you had, you know, maybe like December and January of 2019, 2020, going into this pandemic? Like, where did you think that you were going to be putting your energy? How were things going in your business right before the pandemic started?
I can speak to it from a service company. So we, had our roadmap laid out. We had great staff. We had all the right people in place. We had an amazing sales pipeline of new clients coming on. And we're going to have our best year we've ever had. It was incredible. And then dun, dun, dun.
Are you done, Darian? I can share.
That's it. That's all I got. That's all I got.
Dun, dun, dun,
Like
dun.
the cliffhanger.
Okay. So Sister Sage, like I mentioned, we started in 2018. So we're like babies, I feel like, in the grand scheme of business. And so 2019 was like really just a year to make connections and networks and start getting out there. And I just started to be asked to do a lot of speaking engagements, which was totally new to me because I come from like cooking background, construction background, so it was kind of scary. But I was starting to travel and do these different gigs, and I was really looking forward to all of these different things I had lined up. And I had just returned back from Toronto from the CEO Global Summit, and I think it was like the next day was the pandemic was declared, and I just started getting the emails one by one, everything just knocked down. And it was a really scary time because I was like, I had hardly had Sister Sage online. Everything was really, it was in person to person sales, like going to powwows and going to conferences and vending markets and farmers markets, things like that. And so we hadn't made a ton of money yet. We were just like really babies. So it was a really scary time because I thought this could really end us. Da da da. Your turn, Joella.
I almost spit out my water. That was perfect. Yeah, so my business had been growing, but I was actually mostly wholesale. I didn't do a lot of online sales, so I didn't pay attention to my website hardly. Like I would get a few a month or that kind of thing, but I was still, I joke, I was still sending orders in like recycled cracker boxes because I always try to be like zero waste. So I'd like get an order and then try and find something, eat a cereal box and send it off, like super random kind of thing. I didn't pay attention at all. That year for 2020, I really wanted to work on expanding wholesale out of the Yukon, and I wanted to develop a new soap line. I'd had a new soap line in the works that I was always putting off. And so that was really it. In fact, like the weeks before the pandemic, I had been working on designing labels and that kind of thing. Right before the pandemic hit, my dad got sick in Whitehorse. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to let the soap business rest for a bit. And I'm just going to spend time on my dad and do my contract work out of Whitehorse where they are like, you know, the soap business can wait. It can rest. Dun, dun, dun.
I like that we're going there. So I think we kind of, everybody sort of touched on that. I'm feeling like the next question I had was, did you anticipate the impact it might have on your business in the first few weeks? And then maybe, so maybe it's going to be a two-parter, like as we started to see, you know, things shutting down, did you have a sense of what was coming? And then what happened maybe is the follow-up. It's like, so what's and then what? Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. We did the whole, like, it's time to batten down the hatches. And so we like found every expense we had, like recurring expense, especially like magazine subscriptions or anything office wise, we just cut. And so we found internally, okay, how lean can we go? And what are we going to need to do? Our pipeline totally dried up because they were all uncertain whether what was happening as well. We were uncertain. So we were kind of holding tight and didn't know what to expect, but we just were prepared for the worst. And then we ended up out of, at the time, probably 50 clients. We saw one have to pause services with us, and the rest stayed the course, and a good handful of them increased their spend with us because they said we need to double down on our marketing efforts and promotional efforts. So one of our clients, again, was a restaurant that focused on ghost restauranting, so focusing on the delivery of the food. And so we're able to do some extra work with them. And then we saw a good handful of clients come to us from other agencies. So I didn't realize, one thing I learned was we were known as the boring agency in town. I didn't realize it, which was, again, I think that was the biggest discovery for me. It's like, I thought we were cool and like super fun and creative, but I was like, no, because we're so like results driven and data driven. And it was all about like sales and lead generation was what we love. But I thought we were cool along the way. But no, people knew us as that. And so people were leaving more exciting agencies and more kind of ad-based or very exciting based agencies and coming to us for more sales focused results. And I think too, the market of people going online other agencies were going after bigger clients, and we stayed in that kind of small to mid-market. And so it was surprisingly the amount of work that did come our way, which we weren't expecting or planned for. And then our training material, we've been doing online training for years. And then we learned that there's this was a huge need, especially in the tourism sector, and micro businesses and solopreneurs needing to learn how to do SEO themselves. And there was all this great support for people to get training. And so our training, if not quadrupled in requests for providing that training. So it was unexpected for sure.
And did you have the resources, whether that was humans or otherwise, to respond to that? Or was there a bit of like overwhelm with the kind of deluge of new business coming?
Well, I think because when we battened down the houses and then our sales pipeline dried up, we were prepared for our best year ever. So we were kind of holding tight. And then when that, the announcement came about the wage subsidy was huge, was awesome for us. And we were approved for it. So we lost enough revenue to be approved for the wage subsidy. And then that was a huge help. So we kept all of our staff that we had put in place to be prepared for our biggest year ever. And then when the work came, we had the people, which was amazing. And we had enough work, and work kept coming. And even video work, our video team, we were able to hire more video people, which was really exciting. And thanks to some amazing grants, hired 2 more videographers full time. And we got this great project for a higher ed, a university that was doing tours through video instead of in person. So we were able to get a great contract that way, which was really exciting. So it was very, very cool. One thing I learned though, through the process, I was like, oh, I have some free time because I'm not traveling all the time and driving places or meeting in person. And they're very efficient meetings. And people are like, I don't want to be on Zoom anymore. I want to end this meeting. I found that I was like, I should use my time for applying for this world called RFPs and RFQs through BC Bid and the government. So I did that and learned that it was so much not wasted. I don't want to say wasted. It was so much learned time and energy and effort. Whereas I learned through the RFP process, typically if an RFP is posted, they typically have someone in mind of who they're hiring. And so coming in cold to RFPs and RFQs, where I spent, lots of hours and developing these docs for that, was very fruitless effort. So I would encourage, if you're going to apply it for an RFP, make sure that it's been requested of you. Or maybe if you go in cold and you're better than, maybe we didn't do a good enough job, but it was just seemed like such work in vain, versus we probably could have used our time and energy for other efforts.
So many gems in that. Thank you. And I'm interested to hear, Lynn Marie and Joella, from either of you about, did you anticipate? And I love that and it was intentional, obviously, that we have 2 companies that there's some overlap in your product, not fully, but in a product that saw unprecedented demand. So did you anticipate the impact that COVID-19 might have on your business? And what happened over the last year?
I can share. Yeah, it's kind of weird, right? Because I was an at-home business, and I made soap. And so at the beginning, actually, let me just rewind a little bit. Just like Joella, I didn't spend a lot of time on my website. I had a website, but I was just looking at my Instagram, and there was like old pictures of like 4 packages. Like, look at, I got all these orders. I was like all embarrassed now, like, that's so silly. So I didn't spend a lot of time there. And then right before the pandemic hit, I had just decided to leave my full-time job, which was the money I made from that I was reinvesting into my business. It was like helping with my startup. So I decided to leave that job for mental health reasons, like I've already explained. And then the pandemic was declared. And so it was a really scary time. And then I received some help from, I really involved myself. I just put myself into the community, and found a group of Indigenous women entrepreneurs who really helped to motivate me and inspire me and amplify me And so I started receiving a lot of attention, and a lot of people wanted to support. And at the beginning, I felt like I was like a disaster capitalist, like, oh, I'm profiting off of this like global catastrophe. But then my community was like, no, you're not. You were already doing this. You were already making soap. And for me, it was just like, with the pandemic, it was kind of like a whole shift where people wanted to suddenly support like Indigenous businesses, women-owned businesses, small businesses. And I was just like checking off all of these boxes. And so I like in retrospect, like if the pandemic didn't happen, where would I be now? Because I don't think I would be as successful as I am right to date, because everybody had gathered around and wanted to support all of these smaller businesses. And Joella, I don't know if you have experienced that also.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy, I guess, because I think that the same reaction. It's like you have this product that everybody needs right now, but it felt like bad marketing to be able to do that. But people were like, no, you have this, like you need to get there. And I had created so much product anticipating our tourism industry, right? So it's always building up for that. And so right away I was like, okay, I need to move this product, and all the shops had shut down in Whitehorse. And so I just started ramping up on my Facebook and was like, free delivery around Whitehorse. And so it wasn't even that people were trying to support local right away. It was more they needed the soap to keep their hands clean. I'm like, okay, I got it. I can get it to you. And I did a free delivery, and it kept me busy in, when it was so uncertain at the beginning. And then just started ramping up a little bit more. But I think kind of the defining moment, but was when the announcement was made that the Holland America cruise lines weren't going to be coming to Alaska, because what they do is they come into Alaska and then they drive over to the Yukon and go through all these shops. And so I hadn't ever thought about, I had been pretty anti-cruise line, I think, but I hadn't thought about how much my business actually depended on that industry until they made that announcement. Because I thought, oh, that's that store closing down, it's that store, it's that store, it's that store. All of my friends who own these shops. So that was a big eye opener, I guess, right? And then it seems like not too long after that, that all of the buy local, support Indigenous stuff around Canada took off again. And it was a bit of a panic to hustle, to keep making product, but also to streamline my systems, I guess, right? Because I had been so used to going into a shop and dropping off like thousands of bars of soap and like just dealing with one customer or client, to all of a sudden those are not happening and I'm dealing with multiple customers a day kind of thing. And so it was like my language was changing, my systems were changing, everything. And also felt like that in the Yukon there was tons of people trying to support, but I didn't know at the time what I needed. And so it was like, we have money, we have an accelerator, we have a webinar, we have this. And it was just, I felt like everybody was telling me what to do. And I really just needed to pause and like do stuff. I didn't need any more ideas.
Yes.
Joella, did you have people helping you? Because I mean, with me and my sister, she couldn't come over anymore. She had at this point had 2 young babies at home. And her health is not, she didn't want to jeopardize herself. So she was making sure to stay home like the orders were. So did you have people helping?
Yeah, but it was kind of weird because like you in my house, and I was like, do I let people come in my house now? Like, how do you do this around COVID? But then like, it's hard when we watch Southern Canada news where the cases are growing so fast and the Yukon hadn't even had a case yet. It's like, okay, reality, we can still have people in our homes. And I had lots of people helping me like do deliveries and be in support. I just slowed down the people in my home kind of thing for a bit.
Yeah, I think even right now with my sister being here, it's still, with the new restrictions going on, you have to stay in your own neighborhoods, things like that in at least across BC. So things are still like really touch and go. And what happens if I do all of a sudden get a huge contract or something, and it's just a couple of us here? So there's a lot of variables to think about here.
The challenge of home-based business. And Darian, to that point, did your entire team go remote, and what was that like?
Yeah, it was wild because our whole, unique value proposition always to our clients was we're taking these disciplines like SEO, PR, digital ads, website building, and we're putting them all in a house together, an office together where they're going to talk to each other, and you're going to get the best results because these kind of services are meshed. And so we all went home. So thanks to, we use a project management tool called Basecamp. So Basecamp was our kind of glue in the task oriented stuff. Slack was our kind of glue for communication day to day. Thanks to Zoom, we would do these kind of check-ins a couple times a week. And those were kind of the tech pieces that kind of kept us going and flowing. And then I think too, what I was, speaking of technology, I think one of the coolest things I saw come out of this was having watched the web shift world, in the last 8 years, like Shopify did one of the coolest things, like their ability to step up and provide services and support. And also just being like, they're just a great tool. Like, and I think you can speak to it here, like to set up a Shopify store and to enhance a Shopify store, is totally doable. And so all the people holding hands and all the people providing support along the way to do that was incredible. And all these different groups stepped up, but just thinking of Ottawa-based Shopify was one of those many groups that really said, hey, we're going to make sure our tech is used for good. So much like, if you remember, Ben Parker spoke to his nephew, Peter Parker, early on in his life.
Wait
He said,
is this a Spider-Man reference?
well, he might have gone on to become Spider-Man, but before he was Spider-Man, Uncle Ben said to his nephew, he says, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think this was a really cool year where we saw those with great power use it for good. And so kudos to groups like that for providing that support. And it was pretty awesome.
Thank you for that reflection and that Spider-Man reference. I love it.
I kind of feel like you just always have this reference and just like waiting to pounce it out. I appreciate it.
Entire Marvel like quote list that you like to pull from. We're getting to know you. So my question for all of you, and Darian, you touched on this a little bit already, but did you access any of the pandemic relief supports that were provided by government and industry?
Yeah, so the wage subsidy was incredible. Like that was huge for us, right? I think most of our costs are staff. So in the same way, we don't produce soaps or amazing bath bombs, which I just, by the way, if you haven't ordered them yet, you could order them online. Beard oils, they all provide them. Maybe they'll put links in the chat, maybe even provide a discount code or not. Maybe they'll give you a code. Maybe they'll even provide a code where they'll actually charge you 5% more to support their incredible businesses. That should be the code you should get. But all that to say, that was a huge part of our expenses was our humans, our human resources. And so that was massive. What we also in BC, they have a subsidy called Work BC. And so that the government provides $10,000 a year for people to get training. And so we're able to help our clients access that Work BC training grant to be able to train up their internal staff, which was great. But otherwise, that was really the main grant that we were able to access and leverage. And then eventually we weren't eligible for it. But and then they just did a grant recently where if you've hired new staff and your business was able to turn around, there was another grant available, which was really exciting. And so we just applied for that one recently for hiring more people grant thingy. And then I mentioned too, we separate from the kind of pandemic grants, there was 2 grants available of $30,000 each to hire youth doing tech. And so the government provided these Get Youth Working grants. And if you haven't yet, there's an amazing company called Granted, granted.ca, based in Vancouver, and you could subscribe and they send out these weekly emails that tell you about all the grants that are available. And it was probably one of the best resources I've seen out there as far as getting grants, knowing what grants are available. And then we applied for one other grant, thanks to Granted, was a US export grant. So again, with the available time we had, I gave up on RFPs eventually. I was like exhausted from doing them. So the government will give you up to $100,000 and they'll pay 75% of your spending if you want to expand your product business or service business to the United States of America. So we applied and were approved for $60,000 to expand jelly marketing services to Western USA. And it was incredible. I was blown away. And it was like, we got the grant within a week. And bonus is, two of the questions they ask you in the application is, are you Indigenous and are you under 40? So if you can answer yes to both those, like we got approved in 4 days when we applied, which was, I've never heard of a grant that's that quick.
Wow.
Yeah.
Darian, if you have them handy, would you share some of those resources in the chat? And I've just put links to all of your businesses in there too, because that
totally.
I think that would be so helpful. And
yeah, I'm interested in that Granted, but granted.ca, like I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, Stephanie Sang runs it. She's awesome. And I was like that, mask companies and hand sanitizers, like the 3 companies that every small business needs to survive the pandemic. And yeah, Granted was incredible through this whole time.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that out. For Sister Sage, because we were so new, like at that moment, a year and a half old or something, I didn't have a lot of so a lot of the grants were like, if you have lost a certain amount of money or employees or wage and stuff. I'm like, well, I'm new.
Yeah.
I'm trying to like I've gained since the pandemic was declared. And so there were a few that I've tried to apply for, but like, well, you aren't really taking a hit. So even now, so I'm still like checking things out. I think I mentioned earlier that I am going to be receiving a loan finally, which for Indigenous people, oftentimes it's really hard to access a loan or, any kind of funding, because accessing capital means you have to have capital. And for Indigenous people, we don't come from intergenerational wealth. I couldn't go to my friends and family and be like, hey, can I have some money so I can get some money? So that's why, to date, we've been a bootstrap business. And so I'm about to receive some funding and looking to spend that to scale up Sister Sage. So that's pretty exciting. Joella, da da da.
Doom, doom, doom. Yeah, I did actually. I ended up getting CERB when it first came out for one like installment or period, because I thought I wasn't going to be able to work and I needed to take care of my dad. And thankfully only had to do that for 1 week. It was just our one installment or whatever, because it was so short-lived before my work, like my business and everything just blew up and I didn't have time to do any of that. I did receive through the Yukon government, there was some assistance for fixed costs, right, to help cover all of the basic bills and stuff, and that was super, super useful. There was one federal one that I applied for, but I in the end had to pay it back because my revenue was so large, which in the end was a good thing. Of course, the local office here was not happy because they have to, federal government doesn't like to take money back, but it was for a good reason. And I said, like, really, it was like a short-term loan. Like, I think it was $7,000, because at that time I was able to use that to purchase larger quantities of packaging and raw goods. And so just be able to have that extra cash flow to be able to do that once the like supply chain issues were getting resolved and that kind of thing. So it was amazing. And I was so lucky and, totally happy to give that back. And then I would say the other support that I got was through our Yukon University with assistance from the territorial government, to had like, it was called a pivot program, right? And so it was through there that I actually got onto Shopify. I had been with another website, but they supported me through coaching and through the website stuff, which I was like, my website's fine. I don't need it, because I didn't know what was coming. And so I'm so glad I did, because the back end changed. And so through that, so it wasn't like a cash investment, but it was that support and technology investment, I guess, that was able to get me through.
So on that note, question for you, like the Launch Online, they have this grant in BC, which is one of the most awkward grants because I don't know if you've applied for it or not, but it's like, yeah, it's like the government's like, they put $20,000 in, then they're like, let's put another $30,000 in. But you have to be in this weird place where you can't, your e-commerce can't be good, but you also, it can't be bad. And it's like, you had to be in this super like pubescent stage of e-commerce. So all these incredible businesses that are actually doing good, but could be great, didn't qualify. And all these folks that wanted to start it. And so I'm so blown away. Like there's been so many grants that were amazing, like US export and wage subsidy, but then this Launch Online thing comes and it's so awkward. And then once you apply, you know, you don't hear from months later. So I'm just curious if you applied for that or what your experience was, or if you had any friends apply and get it. Cause I still have yet to meet a real person that has actually gotten that grant.
That's one of the grants I was looking at, and I was like, oh yeah, I can tick all the boxes. And then I was like, wait, no, I don't. There's like one or two like little nuances in the grant that yeah, so I can apply
Was it
for
because
it.
your website was too good?
Yeah, there
So-
was like there was like
Which is
just, and there was only
crazy.
a little couple of things, but I'm like, I need a redo of my website. This could have been really huge for me.
Yeah.
So I was unable to access it, unfortunately.
It's a weird thing. And Jacqueline, I don't know if have you met anyone or heard from someone that actually got that grant?
No, zero
Yeah.
number of people.
And
Mhm.
they gave that to, I don't know if it's token. I'm just going to throw it. They said like, and we're going to make sure 30 to 40% of it
Yeah,
goes to Indigenous people or whatever
Indigenous.
number it was. And I've never met anyone that got it. And I'm like, who's applying? Like, and my other question is, do you break your website? Like break off, like, it's like your
No.
car, right? Break the fender and the rear view mirror to be like, oh, I need a grant now. My website's
Yeah.
not that great. And then hope you get it.
Right, like just delete a couple of the things that interesting.
I don't know. Not that
I
I'm
guess
saying you should do that. I'm just saying like,
I hope
yeah.
I hope nobody did that. I think, you know, we're just coming out of a Fireweed session this morning where we talked to a panel of funders, and I'm always reminded, you know, especially with a lot of these large institutions that have been so harmful and oppressive in perpetuating colonial just power structures.
Yeah.
You know, I can tend to forget that there's like human beings running them, and that like they didn't anticipate this pandemic. And you know, a lot of the time, you know, government will put aside vast swaths of money, but when it kind of trickles down, the process of getting it out the door to people in the most useful way hasn't been thought through. And I think we see that time and time again. And definitely, you know, Joella and Lynn Marie and I spend, you know, a lot of time each week with 24 Indigenous femmes and women entrepreneurs. And we could probably write a book on all of the things not to do when you're trying to support entrepreneurs who are starting out or growing or going through a pandemic or belong to a marginalized community. It's so frustrating, but actually I think the biggest solution is having conversations like this where we share information like, oh, did you apply for that? And like, don't bother applying, don't bother the RFP route. Like, you know, this was really easy and this was really like a waste of time. And that's, I think, where we see the most benefit and strength.
Yeah. But I'm just blown up. I'm like, that's $50 million sitting somewhere, going somewhere. And I'm just
figure out where it went.
we need to, I feel like we just need to write a strongly worded email to Government of Canada.
But I've tried stuff like that. I've tried that route, but no one seems to really care. Or I did one where I was trying to get an answer to like why they chose like this brand new white owned training provider in Victoria versus like we were the only other training provider that's BC based for this training service thing. And I got passed along to 9 different people and went to 7 meetings only to find out that it was because someone was friends with someone in Victoria. And that's why they didn't go to our fee and we weren't chosen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I mean, I realized finally a guy at the end was like, I'll just tell you the straight goods. This is really what it's about. And I was like, so really there was no process. And it was like, it comes down to people who knew people. And I was like, and then I'm seeing like, I just got an RFP actually sent to me recently from Destination BC where they're saying, hey, we want to actually like make Indigenous people a priority. And if you're an Indigenous owned company, we're going to really make that a priority. But I'm also like, do you really want to make that a focus? So, and even amongst Indigenous people and other Indigenous owned companies, I think there's even some, you know, I don't know, I'm going to call it like hesitancy, but there seems to be that there isn't that, man, we're going to really prioritize working with other Indigenous people yet. Maybe it's coming or maybe not. I don't know, Jacqueline, maybe you've seen it.
I think that sometimes too, it's like tokenism, which in some regards, I'm like, I'm all for it. If it's going to benefit me,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll be your token. I'll be the token Indian, that's fine.
Yeah.
Throw some money my way. And another thing that I wanted to mention, which, oh, did we lose somebody? Darian's gone?
I think you just
It's just my video.
Oh, okay. Something I wanted, because Darian had talked about Shopify, and so for me, and this is something I should have mentioned earlier, but like Shopify at the beginning, they had identified Sister Sage as like a struggling small business during the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, and so they collaborated with Facebook, and they took Sister Sage and taught me how to make advertisements and marketing on Facebook and Instagram. And they also gave me a $5,000 ad spend on the platforms. And so that was like a really, really important for me to gain exposure and just be amplified at the beginning. And that really helped me through. Oh yeah, and through that also, I got to mention this, Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Facebook, gave me a shout out on Instagram and Facebook. So
yeah,
that was really cool.
it was really, I mean, it was awesome to see. And I think one of the really interesting outcomes that we observe is that sometimes like industry or corporations were actually more useful in supporting, especially in this case, than necessarily like governmental support, which makes sense because there's entrepreneurs running those businesses and you have a unique understanding of the challenges that entrepreneurs who are up and coming face. So yeah, I feel like Lynn Marie, in retrospect, that Facebook placement for you was so well timed. Like it was on the kind of like perfectly placed in that like growth trajectory where people were like, I need soap, kind of freaking out, which leads me to my next question for all of you, which is what has been the biggest challenge during this time? What would you say has been the most challenging aspect of the last year as it relates to running a business in a global pandemic?
I just say personal mental health.
That's what I was gonna say too. I like there were so many challenges. Sorry, did I cut you off, Darian? So rude of me.
No,
Okay,
it was just a short.
You didn't so yeah, it definitely was like myself was my biggest challenge because yeah, mental health and self-care. Even with the most recent restrictions where we can't go to restaurants now. I was in the middle of a move and a breakup, so I'm like went to move alone, and restaurants, like going out was like my only like thing, like to keep connected, to go out. And I just like started bawling. I was like, this is enough, like I can't handle this anymore. But now I just have to order in. But so I think that self-care is it's been really important. And it's something that really lacks, and just something that I need to really pick up and be conscious of. And also like speaking gently with myself and being like, you know what, that's okay that you didn't send that email. Just relax. You can do it tomorrow. How about you, Joella?
Yeah, certainly like the mental health part in terms of just like business stuff and trying to like keep up and do better and stay on top of everything, like feeling a lot of pressure in so many ways, but also like in terms of practical stuff, like I really struggled with supply chain issues of having something that people want, but especially up here in the north, trying to be able to get like the right boxes, the stickers, like there always seemed to be one piece missing. But that always went back to mental health, that I'd keep beating myself up and getting more stressed. And so, you know, I feel like a lot of that stuff has been resolved now, but it was really hard and really, really frustrating, especially as, you know, was getting more media attention and all these lists and that kind of stuff. So demand is going up, which is amazing, but then in the end you couldn't provide, right? And so like sometimes the orders didn't align with what I was able to have.
Follow-up question, and thank you all for sharing about that. It's definitely something that I personally have related to and have observed with all the entrepreneurs that we work with, that yeah, the mental health, the ambiguous grief and free-floating anxiety, as well as acute loss and grief, as we see COVID, disproportionately affecting communities of color, and our elders, and the just incredible losses and tragedies that we've seen in our communities. Individual mental health has been, such a massive challenge. So to sort of, reflecting on that, I'm curious what you have most drawn strength from throughout this year. What has been the thing that has most held you up?
I think it's grace. And Lynn Marie touched on that, of just like forgiving yourself, like giving yourself grace. I put a link in the chat there, but there's this like article and course you can take on LinkedIn that's always trending and super popular, where it's like 5 morning habits of super productive people. And so I finally one day was like, screw it. And I wrote this article about what are the habits of regular performing people, like sleeping in, staying up late, binge watching Netflix, like having a warm shower. Because the opposite side of like this hustle mentality of entrepreneurial mentality is like, if you drink this Kool-Aid, you're always having a cold shower, you're waking up at 4 a.m., you're meditating, you're like this form of like perfection that entrepreneurs have kind of created. And it's so gross, right? And it's so tiring and exhausting to try to be like that. And so I just had to learn to give grace to myself and to tell myself, like, you don't have to do everything. You don't have to be on all the time. You don't have to check every box. You can go for that walk. You can, close the laptop and take a breath. And that was, I don't know if I do it all the time, but I'm trying. And then in that, creating an environment for others around to show that grace and room for imperfections all the time.
It's so funny because my employee, my help, showed up this morning, and I yelled from upstairs where my bedroom is. I'm like, I'm still in bed. It's like 8 a.m. And she's like, I thought you were gonna work out this morning. And I said, well, I didn't. So yeah, just being giving myself some grace and being gentle with myself. I find that now that we're so online connected, I feel that I have so many friends now, like way more, like I feel like I'm more connected now than I was before the pandemic. And even if it's virtually, it's like now I have so much, like such a bigger network, and so much inspiration and mentors and other Indigenous women that I can turn to, who are there to support me. And I think that's a huge part of where I draw my strength from is my community. And Joella, she's my soap BFF.
And I was gonna mention Lynn Marie because in my community, of course, I have really good friends and really good relationships, but nobody here knows what it's like to be an entrepreneur at this kind of level. Like their like vision of me is totally different, I think, than the like reality. And so being able to have phone calls with Lynn Marie at midnight, panicking about whatever issue, has been amazing. And no, we haven't met in real life, but we see each other on Zoom all the time. But we've also become like besties outside, which has been amazing. And I like my connection to the whole like Lift Collective and Fireweed and everything came from Nicole McLaren, who was on earlier from Raven Reads, that her and I had become online friends a few years ago when she started her business, because my product was in her box, and she just posted on Facebook like, any other Indigenous businesswomen need something. Like this was like March 23rd or whatever last year when everything happened. And I was like, yes. And then it just turned into this like beautiful, magic online community that has really been super, super grounding. But being able to balance that with like the grounding in real life outside of my door, and forgetting that there actually are people here, that love me and hold me up also. And so the importance of maintaining those like real life relationships too. And I'm totally losing my voice. But just like also finding strength in culture and learning my language, that I've been able to try and do that a lot this year, and being able to step back, but also figuring, of course, how it feeds into my business, right? Because I never do anything for myself anymore. There's always some business connection.
Thank you. Yes, if you follow Joella on social media, she is so great about getting out on the land with her nieces and nephews and just like kids in the community. And I always find that so beautiful that there's a way to, way to switch off, and definitely relate to turning towards the intergenerational wealth that we all have access to, which is our culture and the land. It may not be intergenerational wealth in the capitalist sort of system, but it is definitely wealth that we carry. And it's been so inspiring to watch you on your language journey, Joella, as well. So yeah, thank you. What I kind of want to look forward a little bit, and knowing, to be fair, for everyone tuning in, like we didn't exactly like go and find entrepreneurs who've just been like wrecked by this pandemic. And I just want to say that like, obviously there are folks out there who have lost everything. Joella and I have a lot of friends who run tourism-based businesses up in the north, and my heart just goes out to them. It has just been, when she talked about the cruise ship industry basically died. But also in the Northern Territories, there was no interprovincial travel, and I don't even know if that has changed yet, which basically decimated the tourism industry. So we didn't go and find someone to speak on this who hasn't weathered the pandemic well, for obvious reasons, because we wanted to share sort of the experience of what you've done so that you could succeed in this time. But just wanted to name that there are folks that there's nothing they could have done that would have saved their business, because of how impacted their industry and their access to their customers has been. So what I wanted to focus on is what's on the horizon for 2021 and 2022, and what are some of the changes that your business experienced through this pandemic that you foresee being really instrumental to your future growth? And is there an area of your business? I mean, we talked obviously about e-commerce that has sort of become like a hero product or a service that you hadn't necessarily anticipated, but you're kind of hitching your horse to that wagon going into the future. So yeah, what's on the horizon for all of you?
I think I learned like the whole Robin Hood thing of like getting to work for the rich and serve the poor. I think our like going in with that mentality still of our school, we're learning there's, again, mostly tourism has been leveraging our training in other organizations and corporations. And it's been probably our biggest kind of where our energy has been going to develop our digital skills training school, which has been incredible. But then we're also able to offer cohorts at a significant discount we're working with Entrepreneur North. So entrepreneurs in Northern Canada, which is really exciting. So we're looking at bringing through a cohort of 57 in our next time in June, which is really cool. And so I think learning that we went through a bit of a shakeup, I think more and more businesses and small businesses are realizing I need to learn these skills myself. I can't always outsource it or afford to outsource it. So what if I can equip myself and empower myself to learn how to rock a Shopify, rock some Facebook ads, do SEO myself? And I love that opportunity. We get to be part of that training, part of it all. So I think that's been big piece. And then our other effort is realizing the power of SEO. So being just where do you show up in Google ranking, and the amount of impact it has on the economy. And so and also knowing what I love about SEO is that no matter how big your business is or small your business is, if you can do SEO well, you can outrank your competition and outrank anyone for certain products and appear in search engine results, and in turn get good sales. So I just learning that, how crucial that is to the economy in our country.
Yeah, I think that is an excellent point. And again, I'm going to go back to saying, like, I'm just a baby in the business grand scheme of things. Not to like downplay who I am or where I'm at right now, but I feel like there's so much like growth for me to achieve, especially with education. Like Darian's just talking about like marketing or SEO, all of these different things. So I've involved myself with the Shopify for Startups program. And I'm excited to learn about all of these things. So it's like investing in myself and the business. So that's something on my horizon. On my very immediate horizon, tomorrow I'll be on APTN. So I'm really excited about that. It's going to be live, and I'm a little bit nervous. So maybe come and cheer me on.
Everybody's uncle is going to see you, because none of us have cable in our generation.
I think, okay, they just released it as a channel. If you've got Apple TV, you can now get APTN as a add-on.
Okay, we're all gonna tune in.
Yeah, it's a new. I think they just released it recently. So you go to Apple Store, App Store, and you can download APTN.
Sweet, okay. Awesome. Yeah, I'll let my mom know so she can watch. And like besides that, it's really hard to look to the future, because I feel like this is my future, and I'm experiencing so much success right now. Like I just moved into my own house, and I have some employees, and like how like I feel secure right now and successful, and like how much more can I go? And I know there's a lot, so I just need to really like envision it and put it out there into the universe and be receptive and accept it back.
Beautiful. I also just want to add that I know you're getting your motorcycle license, and I feel like that is a really important thing that's on the horizon, even though it has nothing to do with your business, but maybe your mental health.
So important. Can't wait when I can come back to the Lower Mainland and go for a rip around with Lynn Marie. On the horizon for me, I think, well, I'm building a building, which is super exciting. So getting this business outside of my house where I can hire people and provide skills to people. I really see my business as an opportunity to provide skills, confidence, and opportunities for people who might not be interested or able to participate in the workforce. So whether it's the mine up the road or the First Nation or government, realizing that those jobs are not for everybody and trying to provide a way there, but also truly believing that I can provide opportunities, skills, and employment for people to connect back to the culture and to their land, but also show them a way that they can make money in a different way that is normally in our community. And I think that's really important for me. So setting up, the physical space, but also starting to look at just ways that I can do that through mentorship and training also. I used to say I wanted to be the best soap maker in the Yukon, and that I was still like clearly gonna stick to soap and not diversify, but it's hard sometimes not to be like, oh, I should make bath salts, or I should do this, right? Like there's so many things and such a demand, but I really see the opportunity line with soap and just different soap lines, like so many different ideas. But really, until I can have a dedicated workspace where I can scale and make more, I feel like I need to stay focused on all of that. So looking forward to a building. Yeah,
coming 20, well, hopefully November, but maybe January. And Joella, I'm so excited about this. Will you just tell us a little bit more about this plan? Because I think the process that you went through is so inspiring and actually so vital for Indigenous entrepreneurs, particularly women, around like building a purpose-built facility for your business that you own, and some of the some of the design, like some of the aspects of that building and what it'll be used for, I think is really interesting.
Yeah, so it was like, I just knew that I needed to get out of my house for like peace of mind, but also the part of town that I live in is the Newark First Nations community, and it's a little bit rural. So it was the kind of thing where I used to go and pick the girls up after school and bring them here. Like they couldn't just walk easily. And of course I was doing that, but I wanted to be more central in the community. And so a few years ago, I bought this little piece of property because my vision then was like not a sea can, but I just wanted small, energy efficient, super compact. And it still is. But I started to think about what role my building and space would have in the community, I guess, right? And I started to think about safety and vandalism and like a whole bunch of different things. And so I was like, I need to have an apartment or something on this building, so there's somebody there all the time, because I live about 15 minutes away. And then I was like, oh, I totally need to have an apartment, because that's how I can make money, right? That my soap business is good, but it's not that good to warrant building a whole entire structure. So I was like, of course it's apartments. But then I was like, that's actually a huge need. Like we have such a housing crisis here in the community, and people aren't investing in the community. It's all like government housing, but private industry isn't doing that. So I thought, if I have the opportunity, the ability to leverage money and grants to be able to do this. So now, as it turns out, I'll be having 3 apartments, and 2 of those will be social housing, and the other one is just a longer term rental that I plan on renting to industry for a higher amount to offset some of those costs, to be able just to contribute. But I really just hope that it becomes like a little hub in the community. Some people call it a store, but I really don't envision it being a store anytime in the future. That it's really like, I need to get to production, and we don't have, especially now, like the tourism or people looking for a place to shop, to buy gifts or that kind of thing every day. Like certainly if someone knocks on the door when we're down there making it, we'll open it up, but it's more like production facility, but also housing, because I really just believe that as an employer in the community, I need to be offsetting, that with housing, whether it's for the people that I hire or just in general. I feel like I have a duty or responsibility, I guess, to offset that housing need.
Incredible. Like just that your vision for that is so inspiring. It addresses so many different issues. And I love that you started out being like, I got to get out of my basement. And then you ended up like, I'm going to provide housing to my community, like not only to my community, like at a, a level that's affordable for folks who are experiencing financial insecurity, but also I'm going to charge industry a premium to offset, like just only entrepreneurs. This is why I love this work.
And the other part that I want to mention too is that one of the units will be accessible, and that's really important, because especially in the north, there's such a lack of accessible units. And so I guess like wheelchair accessible is what I mean by that, right? And so really making the extra effort and doing that, because it's important.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you. I think this is a really great segue into my final question, and maybe the most important question of this entire conversation, is what have you learned about yourself as a leader? Or another way of asking this would be, how has your leadership style or your personal leadership evolved over this year? So yeah, what has this year taught you about yourself as a leader?
I can go. I see everybody else's mic still on. It looks like they're in deep thought. I think for me, because I've turned it into a joke lately, that I realize that I am not OCD, and that I need a team of people that can really focus on those details, that I am much more bigger picture, bigger vision. This is my goal, and that I can command the ship. But when it comes to the little tiny details, my brain just cannot do that. So I guess it's about really realizing where my strengths are, focusing on that, and then building a team to complement those other things where I might not be, and try to keep elevating and promoting those peoples and those skill set.
I love that. I often find myself in conversations with entrepreneurs, especially non-Indigenous, like more like tech, white, Silicon Valley, where they're just like, oh, well, yeah, they imply that everybody has an A-type personality or OCD that's leading a company. And I was like, no, don't relate to that at all. Have worked with mostly creative, fluid folks like you described, Joella, who need that support for the details. So that's so vital. Darian, Lynn Marie, what have you learned about yourselves this year?
Oh, it's a standoff. Yay, I win. I've won. Sorry, I learned that I lead with my authenticity and with my integrity, and that is really, in my experience, it's been well received. And I think that looking at my social media platforms, that people really love to see my authenticity come through. I really strive to not have like a really curated, like overly curated platform where it's like, this is me, this is like we said earlier with Joella, like these are just my products, and I'm trying not to like make them super fancy with lighting and backgrounds and stuff. But also that, I've been using my platform for good and not evil. And so I'm like, I use my platform to speak up for other people who feel like they can't speak up because they're oppressed or they're afraid of backlash. And so I think I've been kind of falling into this leadership role as like a warrior, and not in the sense where I'm like actually like fighting with people, but like as fighting for, Indigenous rights and women's rights. And I'm I'm excited to see where I will evolve to organically and what I will iterate to in the future. So I think that's what I've learned about myself this year.
I think biggest thing I'm learning is just I have so much more to learn is the biggest one. I know so little, and I think that's been I think it's been that year of reminders of like how little I know and how much more I have to listen and grow.
Thank you. I think when I listen to all of you reflect on that, I hear all of the sort of qualities that I have come to understand as parts of matriarchal leadership. So servant leadership, vulnerability, not needing to have all of the answers, but having the ability to stand strong as needed and to hold a vision and engage and enroll others in that vision, as opposed to kind of like militantly dragging folks towards an end goal, just really inviting them to engage with that. And I really appreciate any time I hear that, because there's a lot of thought leadership and a lot of sort of rhetoric out there about what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur and leader that really upholds white supremacy and colonial ideals and patriarchal, toxic patriarchy and late stage capitalism. And it gives me a lot of hope, and I think is really important for Indigenous entrepreneurs who are up and coming, or people who are considering becoming entrepreneurs, that there is success to be found in doing things differently, and to be doing things standard rooted in our culture and guided by more traditional forms of leadership. So thank you all. We have one adorable, lighthearted question thank you, Margot, for throwing a question in the Q&A function. And please, anyone who is listening, please put your questions in here. We'd love to hear from you. We've got 10 more minutes to answer them. And this is, it says, Darian's statement prompts me to ask the panelists, Do you have a Marvel superhero, hero, or other non-Marvel hero that you admire? And what do you admire about them? So who's your favorite superhero? Dun, dun, dun.
Is this a question for everybody? Okay.
I have a hunch as to what you're gonna say.
Well, of course, besides Tara Fraser. But I bought this little pack. It's like a little car and it says She-Hulk on it. And it's just this babe like ripping up this car. And I've had it just like in my bathroom for so long. I'm like, that's me, I'm the She-Hulk.
I love it.
So a little glimpse into my life there. You're welcome.
Well, I was also thinking of your Halloween costume when you dressed up as Wonder Woman, except you had a braid of sweetgrass and your drum instead of a shield and a sword.
It's funny because I just watched both Wonder Woman movies, and the one last night was like 4.5 hours. Like, that's my self-care. But yeah, love Wonder Woman. She's pretty babely.
I don't think I have any. I'm like, I wish I did, but none are really coming to mind. So love the question, Margot. And when it comes back to me, I'm going to reach out to you and let you know.
Awesome. Darian, is this a tough choice for you?
You know what? I'm gonna go with Invisible Woman, who is not as well known. They attempted 2 movies of the Fantastic Four, and then they attempted a third, and the third was a bit better, but they've never done the Fantastic Four well. More people know the X-Men or Avengers, but Invisible Woman's, I love that she can make herself invisible, and she can create these bubbles of safe places and protect others that way. I like what she stands for. And she's like Mr. Fantastic and Human Torch and The Thing get most of the glory, and she just plays this really cool role. But I think she's probably the most powerful of the Fantastic Four.
I love that too. So
I have a question for you, Darian. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Oh, if I could have one, like,
Yeah.
or are you saying do I have one now?
If you could have one,
Yeah.
any, and it doesn't
Yes.
have to be like, uplifting your community, but you just
No.
wild with it. Here.
If I could do anything. You know what? I've actually really liked Wolverine's claws things because like I like cooking a lot. So it'd be cool to like, and I always imagine having them sometimes when like I want to, make new trails through the forest. So I use it for like probably not typical Wolverine purposes, but I'd use it for
Just for convenience.
cooking and pioneering new trails.
Nice.
I'm gonna go with Storm from X-Men and Aquaman because superheroes that can harness the forces of nature or the weather really spoke to me even as a kid.
beautiful. I like that too.
Mine's not terribly exciting. I always thought like I would love to have the power of persuasion. Just persuade people to do what I want.
Yeah.
That would be
Professor X, that's his thing. Get the mind.
There we
Jean
go.
Grey. Yeah.
I love it. I wanted to thank you all. This has been great. I feel like this is the closest conversation to like, I don't know, drinks at a conference or grabbing, I was up north with Joella last year, like grabbing ramen together that I've had in a while. And I just wanted to, thank you all for your time and for sharing the resources that you did around grants and other things that are useful, and also what wasn't as useful. That is often just as helpful. And wanted to give a shout out to we had originally thought about inviting some organizations who could share some of the resources that they have been providing. So we didn't do that. We wanted to have this be a bit more conversational and led by entrepreneurs, but I just wanted to give a shout out to WEC and the work that Ashley Richard's doing there. NWAC and NACA, so our national organization of AFIs. And as we learned this morning, there is some really accessible supports for entrepreneurs that need access to capital at the moment to grow or shift their focus in their business. And those are some great places to find those resources. And also, we didn't have this on our list, but Shopify definitely gets a shout out. I think Joella and Lynn Marie are both Shopify customers. Obviously, Darren had some great stuff to say about them, and I know that Kyle is in the audience here. And as part of Fireweed, the Fireweed Fellows all have access to the Shopify for Startups program, which has been really incredibly useful already. It was just getting started in supporting entrepreneurs who, much like Lynn Marie and Joella, maybe had a website, but it was like, at the beginning of this, it wasn't much of a workhorse in their business. And now it is like the entire business is on there. So yeah, just props and support to or props and gratitude for the support of everyone, and a thank you to the First Nations Tech Council, who's also been mobilizing and doing a ton of work to get communities and individuals trained up and online. And what an incredible time to, I mean, you can work from anywhere as long as you have internet now. And the opportunities that are becoming available in our remote communities for folks to have really access to really excellent jobs, and the work that the First Nations Tech Council is doing to support that is so important. So very grateful. Thank you all. Any closing final words of wisdom for entrepreneurs weathering this bizarre storm of pandemic?
There's a great children's book called You Are Special, and it's one of my favorite books. And I read it to I remember I was reading to my kid the other month, and I was reading it. I just started crying because it's such this amazing book about like freeing yourself from what other people think about you, but just remember who you are at your core and who made you. So it's a beautiful children's book. B, great for entrepreneurs. I think every entrepreneur should read it at some point, because I feel like entrepreneurs are trying to forge new paths and do things, and to have that voice that says you are special every day is a great thing to have.
I think that there's probably a demand, Darian, perhaps for you to record yourself reading that book to entrepreneurs. I would definitely listen to it. You've got all the video set up, so what's stopping you? Thank you. Any final words of wisdom, Joella, Lynn Marie? No.
Yeah, I think I would just want to mention, like Sister Sage is one of my missions is to really support and mentor and motivate other Indigenous women and youth to define their own financial futures through business, as a means of like a take back and economic reconciliation as the original and first entrepreneurs of this land. I think it's very important. So if anyone out there does have questions or he wants to get in contact with me, I'm pretty open. And there's a lot of ways you can go about it. Instagram, all social medias, my email.
Yeah, and I think that reminds, I would just add to that, when I'm doing a lot of talks with like younger people, I talk about how like it is okay to make money. That I think sometimes in communities with the whole like crowd bucket syndrome and that kind of thing, we tend to like quiet ourselves down a little bit, but like we used to have systems of trade and economic wealth in different ways, and that just looks different now, and that is okay, and that we need money, and don't be afraid of trying to make all of the money.
Yes, because look at what just even the three of you are doing with that, employing people in your community, providing housing, providing training, role modeling. And none of that would be possible without the money that's coming into your businesses. Thank you. Yes, I definitely echo that. What a great Yeah, what a great time. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing all of you and interacting soon. Darian, I've got some follow-up questions for you around kids books and video, so I'll be reaching out. But for now, thank you, Chimigwich, and I will close us off. So have a great afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and take care. Bye.